Iceland with the Child Protection Act, with children under 12 may not be outdoors after 8 p.m. Unless, of course, they are accompanied, and children 13 to 16 may not be outdoors after 10 unless they are on their way home from events organised by safe environments, schools, sports organisations, or youth clubs. So those are a lot of interesting, platforms for us to be able to explore. Before we go into your thoughts on this, we have thoughts from the public and from the street. Let's take a look at this video.
Kalau bersetuju boleh je kan?
Boleh.
Suka hati. Ellie, jawapan variety ya.
So you bersetuju ke tak bersetuju?
Saya bersetuju dengan cadangan untuk perintah berkurung bawah 18 tahun sebab saya melihat tak ada keperluan sebenarnya untuk remaja bawah 18 tahun keluar daripada rumah pada pukul 12 tengah malam dan ke atas.
Saya bersetuju. Sebabnya saya rasa bagi remaja di bawah 18 tahun tak ada keperluan pun untuk keluar pada waktu malam.
Saya setujulah. Cadangan tu kalau dikuatkuasakan sebagai akta undang-undang, kerana saya selalu nampak budak-budak remaja melepak-lepak di restoran, dan ada juga yang hisap tu apa? Shisha. So saya pun sebagai wakil ibu bapa, saya pun rasa risau. Tapi kerana kalau ada akta tu, saya rasa banyak gejala sosial yang boleh dielakkan daripada berlaku.
There you go. Those were some of the comments from the general public. So the question is, Faridah, is this just transferring responsibility of parenting to the community and authorities? So will this actually answer the problem of social ills being overcome?
Absolutely not. I totally disagree with all of the people that were featured in the video just now, because you know, when you have a curfew, what is the meaning of a curfew? A curfew is usually instituted for a short period of time, usually because of some violence or some major crime. Right. It is not a long-term solution for anything. And when I was watching that video just now, I was kind of curious, you know, these people were talking about young people, stigmatizing them, in my opinion. And the question that came to my mind is, what were they doing when they were teens? Okay.
Similarly,
exactly.
Being out and about.
Exactly. So being a teen means that you rebel against the rules. That's what all teenagers do. That's part of growing up.
Right.
And this idea of putting curfews on them, I think it's just going to repress whatever it is that they're doing. It's just going to go underground. It's better for someone to know if somebody is doing something wrong and to address that than to say, no, you can't go out at all, and abdicate that responsibility to the state. And it's not the state's job to monitor your children's activities. So what we're going to be doing if we do adopt this, I feel, is that we're going to weaken children's muscles to make decisions, to take responsibilities for their actions, and to have the right kind of friends, because we cocoon them at home. How are they going to interact with society out there? Are they suddenly, magically, at the age of 18, suddenly know how to get on with people? Are they going to know how to judge whether something is good or bad? They're not going to have the skills.
So what are your thoughts on those countries that have implemented these kind of curfews?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of studies that have been done, and just as much as the studies say it works, there are equal studies that say it doesn't work, right? So I suppose the jury is out on it. I think in Iceland particularly, one thing that stands out to me is that it is a largely homogeneous society, right? And in Malaysia, my concern is that we already have this culture of moral policing. And my concern is there will be profiling in terms of race and religion. And if a young person is sitting out there and hanging out with his friends at a mamak shop, why is that loitering? Adults do it too, right? So what is it that we are so worried about these kids? And isn't the responsibility of monitoring your kids' activities, isn't that the parents' responsibility?
No, absolutely. It has always been the parents' responsibility, and it should not migrate to anyone else. And having rules or regulations in place helps certain conditions. But this,
when it's serious.
I'm just looking back into how we were as kids. I remember I did not stay past 10 or 12 because I didn't think it was right, and it was education. It was upbringing. It was what you shared or what your parents shared with you. You knew what you needed to do. You had responsibilities the next day, and therefore you need not stay out late. Sometimes you do because there are other things that you need to do. So there are situations where it might be necessary. Yeah,
it might be necessary. And also, I think in our time when we were growing up, our parents inculcated those values and responsibilities within us. And we were reprimanded if we didn't keep to those values. The issue now that I see largely is parents are afraid to say no to their kids. Right? So they're afraid to say no because they don't know how to handle when a child acts up, or the child gets angry with them and doesn't want to listen to them, because the reality is they are going to, even us, I mean, I don't want to say that we were perfect. I mean, we also broke the rules. And we didn't tell our parents everything that was going on. That's part of growing up, right? So if you're going to control these kids, they're just going to go and do it in some other way. Already now in our country, we have internet addiction. Our kids are on social media all the time anyway. And so you're just going to, are they going to stay at home and just be more on social media?
And that brings us to the other problem, because I may not completely agree that parents don't say no. Some actually do, but those are the rebellious ones. So despite whatever you may say, they will still want to go about it, because there's so much peer influence that completely controls that framework, as opposed to whatever respect you have built or you are trying to inculcate with social media. That makes the job for the society at large to function a little bit more difficult.
I see where you're coming from, but we have to go back to the fundamentals. If your child does something that you don't agree with, they must be reprimanded and they must be disciplined. That doesn't change just because we're living in 2017 or 2018 or 2019. So why are we so afraid to reprimand the kids when they do something wrong? Because it's tough love. You're teaching them life skills that they will need to have when they grow older. They need to know how to behave in social environments. They must know what are socially acceptable behaviors, attitudes, language, when they speak and communicate and they interact with people. Because if we don't, what are we bringing up? What characters are we bringing up? What are we nurturing? We are nurturing people who are going to have a dark side, that they're just going to repress. They're going to give you a front that everything is okay. But there's so much happening, because when you're a teenager, it's where you're trying to find out who you are.
But like I said, this is a difficult place to navigate. You know, you're dealing with teenagers. So where would you start if you had to come up with a plan to reduce this, what people call social ills?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is, this has always been something I believe in. The problem with a lot of social ills, I think, is because schools are boring places for most children, right? So they're already bored out of their minds, because as we've spoken about this before, not everybody has linear thinking. So a lot of kids don't enjoy school because they're not academically inclined.
Not challenged
Not
either.
challenged, yeah. So the ones who are very intelligent are not challenged, and the others just, you know, they don't function that way. So I believe that there must be some kind of extracurricular activities, whether it's clubs or at schools, or parents have to find something that has got, like, you know, whether it's sports or it's the arts, something like that, where they're occupied. They are learning social skills in a healthy environment. They are learning to get on with other people, and they also are doing things where there are boundaries in which they have to behave, and they have to learn how to handle whatever is going on. The other issue is perhaps a little bit more complicated. We live in a nucleus family at the moment. Remember when we were growing up, our parents and our friends' parents kind of kept an eye on us, right? If we were going to
you sort of had an extended family of sorts.
Yes. And I think maybe the grandparents don't live so close by anymore, but I think it's really important that parents have a network of friends where they are also looking out for your kids, and you are looking out for their kids as well, so that you can know what the children are up to. Firstly, teenagers are not going to tell you everything that's going on.
But this brings us back to the question of not just parental, but it's a community thing as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the community needs to take an interest in terms of what's happening, as opposed to saying that, oh, close one eye, it doesn't involve me, so I shouldn't have anything to do with it. It's not my problem.
Absolutely. We've seen this in child abuse cases where people, you know, they know something is going on and then they don't say anything. So I think we as a community in our neighborhoods, we must don't be a busybody, but what I'm saying is you must keep an eye on the safety of your friends' kids or your neighbors' kids, and keep an eye on them. If you see them loitering or running around and you're concerned, tell the parents so that the parents can do something about it. I mean, finally, I always come back to this, is the communication. And I think you all were talking a little bit about it just now with you and Fabian about how people are, you know, on handphone. I've had parents tell me that they feel so guilty because when they come home from work, time that they should be spending communicating with their kids, they are on their handphones.
So I said the word screen time versus FaceTime.
Absolutely.
Essentially,
so talk to your kids.
You are role models for what your children will do. So if you spend more screen time than you do with your children being face to face, that's literally going to have an impact on when you want to communicate. They're not going to listen,
and they're not going to tell you what's going on. They must feel they have a safe space where they can tell their parents what's going on and to not be judged. And I just want to add this last bit. I used to do a lot of talks in schools, in secondary schools with boys and girls. And what I found that was really effective in getting them to speak about what's going on is no judgment. And my concern is that we live in a society now that we are so busy judging everybody for everything, and that we have no time to just listen without judgment. And I think what these kids are so hungry for, when we go in and we don't have any judgment and we ask them to tell us what's going on in their lives, they just open up because they just want to talk about what's going on. They don't want to be made to feel like they're guilty, they're sinful, they are wrong all the time, and that some adult is telling them they shouldn't feel that way, they shouldn't think that way. What are teens? Their hormones are raging. So a lot of stuff that's going on. If you're going to start in a place where you're judging them and you're making them feel guilty, they're not going to talk to you at all.
Right. So now the question is, yes, having involved the parents, the community, the state who is looking at, you know, imposing this kind of curfew, what can they do? What are the alternatives?
Now, that's why I say the state and the schools and the parent-teacher association come up with some healthy activities to keep the kids occupied after school, so that by the time they go home, they're tired. This is where you teach them life values, life skills, so that they learn to interact. Because what do we hear mostly from employers today? That social skills, their social skills are online, but their human interaction social skills are very poor. So we must teach people to be able to interact. Secondly, people should be able to feel like they've got a safe space to talk about what's going on. You guys were talking about depression earlier, that people are suffering from depression. We are going to have an epidemic here in 2 years in Malaysia, mental health epidemic. Why? Because people are feeling so judged all the time.
And the one thing that I think we have mentioned earlier is the isolation. The isolation can really push someone over the edge.
Yes. So so the isolation with depression is, if you know someone is having a hard time, just listen. Same with your kids. Some of these fundamental rules, doesn't matter whether you're living in the 1900s or in the 2000s,
are the same.
They are all the same.
I picked up on that last word, listen. I think that's key. We need to listen to each other, listen to your children, listen to your community, and perhaps we can build a better world together. Thank you so much, Faridah, for that. We'll be taking a short breather right now. When we come back, we have more stories to share with you. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.